I was initially inspired by the work of Ansel Adams. His incredible attention to detail, especially with the black and white photography that he did, the expansion on tonal range and the images that he created was really inspiring to me. Of course, living in an urban area, I don't have the wilderness and mountains to photograph, and so I try to apply some of those principles from his incredible work in a city environment. The building behind me was designed by world-famous architect Mies van der Rohe. Detroit has an incredible history of architecture with gentlemen like Albert Kahn and many others who designed such iconic buildings here in Detroit that have been replicated around the world and have inspired many other works. And so I've tried to capture some of that work right here in Detroit. I prefer black and white photography because color photography is so pervasive, obviously, in the world today. And there are so many images that can be lost as a result of distractions due to color. So I like to eliminate those distractions and really focus on the quality of the composition, the tonal range, and the subject matter within the frame. And black and white allows me to do that. So I've had a wonderful time photographing my architecture series, but one of the natural limitations of photographing on a tripod is that my perspective is limited. And so I was really excited to have the opportunity to use drones and introduce aerial photography to really take a different perspective on some of these iconic buildings around the city. I try to do a little bit of research before I go out and shoot a drone image. In particular, I'll take, say, Google Maps and look at an overhead view of the city and kind of scroll around different neighborhoods and look for structures and areas that I think might be interesting. And then I try to think of the time of day that it might make sense to go where the light is best so that I can get the composition that I think I may want. But quite frequently I do find a surprise in the layout of a composition that I had no idea was there before I started. So it's quite interesting to discover new things as I shoot vertically with the drone. One of my favorite photographers, Gary Winogrand, who was a famous street photographer, often referred to his images as a problem and solving a problem. And I think that that's even more relevant today when there are so many photographers shooting the same things that it certainly is a challenge to look for a composition, to look for an image that perhaps hasn't been done 100 times before and that hasn't been sort of worn down and desensitize viewers to it. So I do think of my photography and compositions that I look for as a problem, as a challenge. How do I look at this in a new way and maybe present it in a certain way that's more interesting than I have in the past? I like to bring out the nuance of the subject that I'm photographing, but also apply some of my creative thought on the image as well. So I try to stay in between a range where the image has some interpretation, but that it's not lost, the subject is not lost in the frame. So I love drone photography, I love architecture photography, but street photography is a completely different challenge. You can't control any of the variables and factors on the street other than when you press the shutter. And so that's something that I'll always continue to do no matter what other projects I get involved in. I do think that my photography has been influenced by some of my technical training over the years. I've been involved in photography for about 9 years now, but throughout the course of my work career, I've been trained in physics and computers and things like that. So I think that the thinking around precision with respect to my job has influenced the thinking around precision with my photography as well. And maybe some of that comes across in the compositions and the structures and the way that I see things with respect to my images. Part of the reason much of my photography is focused on the city of Detroit is I think that there's been a series of narratives around Detroit's story over the years. And if you go back maybe 10 years or so, the dominant narrative of Detroit was a city in ruins, a city in collapse. And today, in many conversations, the narrative is on the other extreme, that Detroit is just this awesome city and it's completely come back and it's great for everyone. What I think my pictures hope to depict is a balanced narrative that while there are wonderful things about the city, there are also some challenges that still need to be addressed. And so I hope that people look at the images objectively and can appreciate the balance in the narrative of the city of Detroit.